Today I want to talk to you guys about what makes an ideal farm site, farmlet, as fleet farming folks call them, farmlets. I love that term. Or urban farm site, what have you. So where I'm at right now is a new plot that we're going to be developing for this season, and I just kind of wanted to talk to you guys about some of the ideal criteria that I look for when I'm going to take on a new site, and using this one as a real-time example. So this plot is about 1,500 square feet. So generally when I'm looking for a site, I'm looking for about 2,000 square feet. That's ideal for me economically. I can do about 20,000 in high value, high rotation crops on a 2,000 square foot site. So this one a little bit less. But the reason that this site's more ideal, even though it's smaller, is that it's so close to my main base of operations. It is half a block. It's just down an alley. I can bike here in about 30 seconds, so very ideal as far as location goes. Another thing that's very ideal about this site is the fact that it's kind of a brown, crappy lawn, and I like that. It might mean that there's less fertility on this soil than other sites, but that's okay, we can fix that. That's ideal in the sense that the landowners show that they don't really care about the lawn, and that's a good thing, because the types of people that might be really manicuring their lawn, might have more attachment to that site, meaning that they are probably not willing to have me come and rototill it and put it through all the processes that needs to go through in order to make this site fertile and farmable. So if you haven't watched my video Lawn to Farm, click up here and you can see how the whole process goes. But today I'm just going to talk about what makes this ideal. So as far as aspect goes, I generally am looking for sites that are facing the south. So that's more ideal. So this site isn't facing the south. This is the south here, and I've got a little bit of a garage on the south end, but that's okay. For the most part, the site will be in full sun for at least 6 months of the year, so that's okay. If this was, say, a 2-story building on my south aspect here, that would be a lot less ideal. Doesn't necessarily mean I wouldn't use it. It just means that I wouldn't be able to get as long of a season out of it, because for us in the northern hemisphere, the sun spends most of the time down in the southern hemisphere for us, facing the south. So we want to have more months of full sun than we have the opposite. So this site isn't necessarily ideal in that regard, but it's still good enough because of the other things. So another aspect that I'm looking for is accessibility. So we've got pretty good access because the site has a carport that we can easily get our bikes and trailers with, even back our truck into. So that's really good. So we can get in and out as often as we can very easily. Another thing that it's got going for it is it's got good fencing. So it's got fencing on all sides, which is great. One thing that's not so much a logistical thing, but more of a social thing, and I've talked about this many times before, is something that I love about being an urban farmer, is that I have what I refer to as a social edge. So those of you who are familiar with permaculture and have read any of the permaculture books, be it Bill Mollison's books or even David Holmgren or even Toby Hemingway, they often refer to an edge, meaning when you're thinking about, say, 2 different ecosystems that are coming together, be it the edge of a forest to the edge of a pond, the more edge surface you have, the more places of interaction you have. And this is often where little microclimates and little species interchanges happen. But I find the same thing happens socially, and this is one thing that I find urban farmers have a huge advantage on, is the fact that just at this plot here, I've got 1, 2, 3 visible neighbors, and what that does is it brings attention to the farm site. So inevitably, by me farming this site, spending the time that I'm going to on this site, I'm going to get to know all these neighbors, and they're going to become familiar with what we do. And I guarantee they're going to think it's pretty cool. After 7 years of doing this and meeting thousands of people, other neighbors and all the neighborhoods I've been, we always get to know the neighbors. And these guys have a garden, so that's a good sign. That means they'll probably be cool people that will be engaged and interested in what we're doing. And so when you get to know all those people, they become advocates for what you're doing, in a sense. As they get excited about what you're doing, they'll in effect learn from what we're doing. At every single site I know all of the neighbors at all those plots. So at least 7 to 10, sometimes even 15 of the neighbors at each of one of my sites I know by name. They know me, and every spring they come and check on what we're planting, because they go, oh, Curtis is planting spinach now, okay, we'll go plant spinach now. So it's a really cool way of, by osmosis, educating others about the importance of growing their own food. And so that's just kind of a fun social benefit, but it's also a marketing benefit to us, is that people in effect learn about what we're doing, and then they sing our praise, they encourage their friends to buy our products, so on and so forth. So I really attribute that to the one of the main reasons that we've never had a hard time selling our product, is because we have that social edge. And so that's important. I like to have my neighbors visible to me, opposed to being boxed in with a fence. Not that I wouldn't take a plot that was boxed in with high fences and whatnot, but I like this kind of scenario because it's got the physical barrier, but it's transparent, so we can get to know the people around us. Another thing we're looking for in a site is to not have any big overhanging trees too close to the plot. So the biggest overhanging tree we have here is this, looks like a walnut, some kind of nut tree, and you know, I don't mind if there's a tree in the area. And as you can see, just to get proximity here, that it's only overhanging on the fence by maybe a few feet, and it's on the north side. So that's good, because if it was on the south side, then that would cast a lot of shade. So I don't imagine this tree will be too much of an issue for us. Granted, it will drop some leaves in the fall like it is now, but that's okay. We can remove those, because walnut tree leaves and trees have a tendency to suppress things growing underneath the canopy of them. But I don't imagine that's going to be much of an issue here. So generally I try to stay away from the tree line, and when I say tree line, I'm talking about the edge of the foliage of the tree. That's often where the edge of the roots are underneath. So sometimes that makes it difficult to grow anything underneath it. But even if I look at the neighbor's plot here, they have things growing underneath their tree. So that's a good sign for me, and this tree isn't too much of an issue. But again, if it was on the south side, or if I had trees in here with big overhanging branches coming into the plot, that would be a red flag, and would generally speaking deter me from taking on that plot. When I first started, I said yes to everybody who offered me land, and so I took on plots that had overhanging trees all the time, and often I'd go and look at those plots in the spring or the fall, and I didn't really recognize how much foliage was there. But then by summer, the trees fill out, and then you go, oh my God, what did I get into? So that's a really important one. So another thing that's super important, it's probably the first thing I look for when I take on a new site, is I check for invasive weeds. So I come in and I scan the ground foot by foot and look for invasive weeds. The main weeds I'm looking for are field bindweed and Canadian thistle. And so in my lawn to farm video, I get into that more. I won't get too much more into it here, but I come in and look for those things, and if I see a lot of it, it's usually a red flag. It means that I won't take on the site unless I think I can mitigate it. And so there are ways to do that. One way that I've learned of recently, I haven't used yet, but I have talked to some other farmers that have done this, is used an organic herbicide. And you can, again, don't quote me on the success of this, but I have heard that you can mix vinegar and soap and salt to make effectively an organic herbicide, and you can spray that. I haven't tried it yet, so I can't speak to it, but I have heard of some other farmers doing it and having success. What generally we will do is just tarp or dig them out. But in this case, invasives aren't a big issue for us. So we've just got some quackgrass and domestic grass to deal with, and the odd annual weed, things like mallow, like this, or dandelions, or chickweed, or any of those annual weeds. I'm not worried about those ones at all. But this site checks out for that. Another thing that's important to look for when we're checking out a site is where the water is. So this isn't generally an issue for us as urban farmers, because usually there's a tap right close to the house that we use for our irrigation, and we will always subsidize the owners if their water bills go over what their quota is for the month during the summer. We'll subsidize the difference for them. A lot of people ask about that. So the water, where the water is important, and it needs to be in an accessible place. And if it isn't, what we've done in the past is we'll just create a semi-permanent PVC line from wherever the water is, so that we have a spigot close to where our production area is. I know people will ask, so I might as well talk about soil. So I always look at the soil when I come to a site. I usually just go and dig around and take a look at it. Frankly, I'm not that concerned about the condition of the soil. I mean, of course I'm concerned if I feel that the soil is contaminated. If there was any reason to believe that it was, I just wouldn't use the site. So for people in high density urban areas, that's going to be more of a concern for you. And the way I'm farming isn't necessarily going to be applicable to you in those situations, because you're often going to build up. You're going to build raised beds. You're going to put down a physical barrier, whether it be a couple feet of sand, and then build raised beds on top of that. See, I'm not doing those kind of things, and so I don't use contaminated sites. If I have in the past, and I've had to do full soil remediations in those cases, and it was expensive and hard to justify the cost for you as the farmer if you don't own the land. So I won't use any site that I feel is contaminated. But as far as soil goes, pretty much anything goes, because we can build soil back. You know, a lot of people really get concerned about, oh, the soil is just so heavy clay, or it's so heavy sand. You know what? I've turned over so many sites that have had really, really marginal or poor soils, and with lots of compost and a little bit of elbow grease, you can bring soil back into fertility. So the condition of the soil is never really an issue for me, unless it's, like I said, contaminated, in which case I wouldn't use, or if it was something that was like real builder's rubble, just like gravel and sand, stuff that isn't really soil, it's just dirt. I often won't use those sites. However, our main urban site, the one that doesn't have a house on it, that site was essentially builder's rubble when we used it. But because we had a long-term legal lease on that site, I've been able to justify the cost to bring in a lot of compost to build that site up. And when we first developed that site, we spent probably a couple $1,000s on soil and compost to really build it up. And it's been a challenge over the years, because it didn't have that even clay soil. Like, that soil is very sandy, and it loses a lot of its nutrients quicker than a clay soil would. So I'm not so much concerned about the fertility if it isn't on those extreme ends, because, like I said, we can build that up. But when I come into a site, I do always look for the soil. I try to get an idea of what I'm working with. Usually just stick a fork into the ground and take a look. We've got lots of root matter from the domestic grass, organics in that soil. It's more of a clay soil here than some of my other sites, but that's okay, because, like I said, we can build that up. We just bring in compost. We're usually going to spend at the very least a few $100s in amendments on a new site to start. Each year after that, we might only spend $50 in amendments to keep the soil up to fertility in an organic way. But you know, it's pretty simple stuff. It's pretty straight ahead. So I often, if like I said, if the site isn't contaminated, or if it isn't some brutally unusable type of material like a builder's rubble or pure sand or big chunks of concrete everywhere, I'll use the site and we'll bring it into fertility. Another thing that I often look for is, what are the neighbors doing? And I would, you know, a red flag for me would if we came in here and all these neighbors had really unkept lawns. So I don't mind an unkept lawn if it's the site we're going to use, because we're going to bring it back under control and use it the way we want to use it. But if I came in here and saw all of these neighbors had unmown unmowed lawns with weeds everywhere, that would actually be a red flag for me, because that would mean that those weed seeds are going to be blowing in here all the time, and meaning that I'm going to have to be working harder to manage those weeds. So I don't see that here. I see nice manicured lawns, and I know that sounds ironic coming from me who wants to turn lawns over into farms, but however, it does make my job easier if I don't have to keep picking up the slack and managing their weed pressure. So if they're well manicured and well kept properties on the neighbor's end, that's a really good thing. One thing I'm also looking for is, are these neighbors, spraying chemicals on their property? Are they spraying their fruit trees? I don't see any of the typical fruit trees around here that are normal, or the what I should say, agricultural fruit trees in my area. So apples, cherries, peaches, and apricots. Those trees, if people have those in their yards in my area, they actually legally have to spray them, which is kind of crazy, and the city actually enforces it. I mean, a lot of people can get away with not doing it, but they are enforced, and so that means once or twice a year there's somebody coming in here and spraying stuff, and so that's a concern for us because our farm is organic. We're not certified organic, but I do look for those things, and that would be a red flag as to whether we use that site. But we don't see that here, so that's not an issue. So that's pretty much it. Just using this one as an example, I thought I'd just kind of take you guys through in real time what we're looking for on a site, and this site really passes the test. The landowners are awesome people. That's really, really important. That's probably the most important thing, is the relationship with that landowner. And I always use a standard MOU, a memorandum of understanding. And if any of you guys want to get that from me, I'm happy to give it to you. Just download it from my website. Go to theurbanfarmer.co/book, and there's a thing in there called free extras. Just give me your email address and you can download it. I've got different examples of land contracts I use. None of these contracts have been legally approved, so you're on your own if you use them. It's up to you, and they're not necessarily legally binding either, but they are just standard memorandum of understandings, so that you can go through all the points with your landowner and you guys can be on the same page with what your requirements are and what their requirements are, and I'll set up all your expectations so that there's no surprises. And that's super important, because I have had that work against me in the past, and so this is why now I always have everything in writing. Again, it's not necessarily legally binding, but it's just a contract of understanding, so that you know that you're on the same page, so that there's no surprises for one another during the season. So hope you guys have found that helpful. If you want to see more stuff like this, please hit the subscribe button right now. Like and share these videos with your friends, and check out my website, theurbanfarmer.co, where you've got links to my online course, my one-day workshop, my book, all that kind of stuff. And if you want to make a donation to the show, it's much appreciated and always welcome. You can do that at theurbanfarmer.co/support. All right, see you soon. I'll say that last part again. You can do that at theurbanfarmer.co/support. All right, see you soon.